Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Advanced Kayak Angler podcast. Kurt's having a couple of technical difficulties, but he's going to jump on here in just a second. Still have to get that promo page updated with Kurt on there. But this week, I'll go ahead and bring him on. We have the one and only Jody Queen. How you doing, man?
Hey guys, how you doing, Daniel?
Good. And like I said, Kurt, your Hobie teammate there, he'll be on here in just a second. But he was on, he helped you get on, and now he's having problems. It's Man, we need to add like a young person onto the show so we can
Yeah,
like
need to get that
really get this.
10-year-old with an iPhone 15, and
Yeah,
yeah,
somebody under 40 needs
yeah,
to be on this show to help.
I know. I have my problems all the time with this.
Yeah, I am unfortunately I'm like tech support for my parents, and they have a terrible guy doing it. He's not good.
You
That's
know,
me. I'm
I'm
bad.
old enough. I remember like the DOS and all that stuff. And I mean, I used to be a cyber
Oh
folk,
yeah.
and now I just start punching buttons, and if it just blows up, I don't care anymore. So, but it usually I'm getting where I can get it worked out.
Yeah. So the first reason I wanted to bring you on is because I've been watching your Bash University um, things on Bash University, and they've been great. I just kind of want to see, tell people more about that and how you got a part of it and how you liked it and which ones you have.
Yeah, I got contacted by Bass University sometime, I think, in the very beginning of the year, and they said that they were thinking about starting, the kayak series for which is a great idea,
Yeah.
but a lot of things from the bass boat world, it's still fishing, and you
Hmm.
still have access. If you're a kayak fisherman, you still have access if you join to all the boats, all the pros on the boat side too. So it's a really good deal, but they approached me and asked me if I would be interested. And of course, I was ecstatic. I was like, "Yeah!" I mean, I was really excited about it. So we got together and we did 3 episodes on Lake Hartwell in South Carolina, and then we did another episode at ICAST this year. And I'm looking forward to more, man. It's great information. You go on there, you can find just about anything on techniques, or you know, and it's really specific too. It's not just a generalization of techniques. It's like, this is what you do this time of the year when the watercolor is like this. You get it from the guys who are fishing at that moment on that time on the water, or uh, or getting ready to go fishing or whatever. But you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth, and it's just great information, man. It really helps a lot of people out. I'm proud to be a
Yeah,
part
I
of it.
mean, I've been a member of it for years. If you are a student of bass fishing and you're really into this and you want to learn,
Hmm.
I mean, there's videos all over YouTube, but
Yeah,
these people are actually like a lot of them are just content influencers or
right.
content makers and things like that, and they're not really like honed deep tournament anglers who have taken years to build these,
Yeah,
to really learn these techniques and everything else, and either the kayak side or pros over on the regular just bass fishing side. But yeah, I mean, it's Bash University. There's no better place to learn from.
yeah,
Wow, from a computer, I guess.
yeah. And something else, Dan, is a lot of people don't want to give up their secrets.
Yeah,
There's a few of us out there who just, I mean, I really enjoy. I've always said this. I love to see people catch fish, and I'll keep giving out information until I know that it's hurting me. And it never
yeah,
has. It doesn't seem. You know, um, I just like to see people catch fish, and it doesn't bother me one bit to tell people what I'm using, how I'm using it. When and how and where, and uh, the more people we get into this sport, the more knowledge they have coming into it, the better time they're going to have, and the longer they're going to stay in the sport. So, it kind of
that's right.
avoids the frustration of starting out. If you got somebody sitting there teaching you, how to do something, then you don't have to learn it yourself. So it makes it easier for people to get into the sport too, and that's what we want. We want to build the sport.
I think some of the most rewarding things I've done is like on YouTube, or not that I have a big YouTube channel, but just the few things I have, or posting stuff on Facebook or about a certain technique or colors during a certain time of the year. I felt
Right.
like the last event, I had a guy come to me and said he caught a 7 pounder on a technique he had never used before because of a video he watched of mine. It was
You go.
like that, like it sucked. It was during the same tournament I was in, but
Mm-hmm.
eh,
It backfired on you.
yeah. Oh, I still ended up
It
like
is what
third.
it
It
is.
was a
Still not catch
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It was fine. But I still, it was like that's really as reward. It's become as rewarding as just doing well in tournaments as anything else.
It's very rewarding to know that you help somebody, achieve something.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to kind of want to. I don't know. The guy said that they like people who can teach, and if you don't, I think if you don't mind giving up information freely, then you got 90% of that knocked out. You don't have to be a special, go to school and be a teacher to teach. You just got to kind of know what you're doing and want, have that want for people to catch fish or want to learn what you're doing. And so it actually it comes pretty easy to
Yeah.
teach.
And say here, I'll go over the videos that you have. You have secret spinnerbait jigging technique. That's a good one. I liked that.
Uh,
You've got shaky head, kayak bass fishing powerhouse. Caught a bunch of fish on a shaky head yesterday. That was a good video.
the tournament that I fished yesterday, and I come in second, I used a shaky
Yeah,
head. Did
yeah.
that.
It's just one of those techniques you have to
Yeah.
have. The subtle art of kayak jig fishing, 3 jig types. That like if you're getting into jig fishing, and there was a lot of stuff in that video, like boat positioning and
Yeah.
as you're moving with the jig and things like that. There were a lot of like really subtle tips in that video that I thought were really, I mean, especially for a beginner, but for anybody, were great videos. Was a great video. I'm sorry.
Appreciate it.
Prepping and planning expert tips for productive kayak fishing trip. I think that's the only one I haven't watched yet. And then you had Cash and Rods. That was back in 2021. Yeah. So, I mean, but the other videos on there, you've got Casey Reed, you've got Greg DePalma, Ryan
Mhm.
Lambert, um, Justin Largen, Drew Gregory. Drew Gregory, he had one that was spinnerbaits versus chatterbaits. That was
Mhm.
the best video, the best thing I've ever seen on one versus the other, because I've heard that discussed a lot, and I
Yeah.
really, really liked his video on that. But Drew is so specific with how he fishes,
Yep.
like he has everything so dialed in of the way he fishes.
Yeah.
He really went on there like you and just spilled the beans on a lot of things. And for how successful he's been in tournaments as well as you, like I don't understand why more people haven't went the creek. Like I'm going to have. I've actually told him this before. I'm like, Drew, if I were into creek fishing, I were just getting into it, and I
Mhm.
was just getting into kayak fishing, I would be like your disciple, and I would do exactly what you do and learn because it's the cheapest, best, easiest way to get into the sport of how
It
he
is.
fishes.
I mean, this sport is so accessible. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't have to have $100,000 initial investment. You don't have to have that. You just need a boat, a paddle, and some gear. To carry your tackle in, and anybody can enjoy it. It's just really accessible. That's one thing that this sport has that that's for everybody. You know.
yeah, yeah. So,
And
is there
Drew
kind
is
of?
a wealth of knowledge. That
Oh
dude, I
yeah.
mean, he is a true student of the game, man. I'm telling you, he is a good one to have in your corner if you're asking questions or need to know something. Drew is a good guy to reach out to.
One day too, I'd really like to do a show on because you see a couple of brands like Cash and they have a kayak specific rod.
They do.
And I'd really like to know, so does St. Croix. They have the Mojo Bass
Yes.
or the Mojo Yak ones. Um,
Mhm.
I'd really like to do a show and just talk about because like I'm sorry, Drew's theory is like longer. He like more that Cobra one length where he wants them all to be the same length and
Yeah.
he has a very strong thoughts on rods, and I'd like to talk about that sometime
That
because
goes
I
into
yeah
styles of fishing too, Dan. I mean, he's in
yeah
overhanging limbs and in fast moving water a lot, and I used to be that. I grew up on the rivers, and I understand where he's coming from. I mean, those shorter rods. I mean, longer rods can get you into, if you got different heights, you got to worry about, can I get under this or can I get under that? If they're all the same height, you know what your limits are for getting under bridges or through culverts. Or, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so many subjects that you could just analyze. I mean, it's endless. The techniques and equipment, and there's just, you could run a podcast for a year and never cover the same subject twice.
Yeah. Well, here, another thing I wanted to go over while we were here. I'll go ahead and present it. Share screen. See if I can get this figured out. Hold on just a second. Let me find it. There it is. While I've got you on, I mean, you got the big Cashin logo on your jersey here. Can you kind of talk about the different, because I own a few myself, the different series between the John Cruise, the Icon, Core, and the Kayak and the Element? Can you, like, what techniques, since you have access to all of them, what are there certain reasons you would go up or down, like up to the John Cruise or down to the Element or the Icon Core? Like, if people are looking at getting a Cashin and they want to look at what series to get, can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the Icon series, of course, is, Cashin's. I mean, that's the big one for them, and that's what they started with, and they developed the rods around the Icon series, and they've come, when they first started, they've changed so much since they first started that it's impossible to go through all the changes they made, and they make these rods, in Sansom, North Carolina. And if you ever get a chance to go through the plant there, they'll gladly give you a tour. But man, I mean, it's from ground up. So I mean, just tweaking a rod just a little bit can change the action, or so they have all that knowledge, and it's all written down right there. So they can really fine tune a technique specific rod with the Icon series. And it's the same way with the kayak series. When we first started out, they wanted a kayak specific rod, and they wanted to do all the technique specific rods in that series too. And, when they sent us the Chattergrass rod, it took almost 2 years to develop that rod to get it to where, we wanted. And Corey Dreyer played a huge part in the development of that rod. And he and I were just on the water all the time. We'd use the prototypes they send us, and we'd say, this ain't right. And not once did they say, hey, come on, man, we need to push this rod through. We need to get this done. It's been in development for too long. They worked with us, for almost 2 years straight. And I thought they were going to kick us off the team, but no, but they listened to us, and they said, man, this is, and when they got it down to science, and I say this, on every tournament that I fish, that I'm using this chatterbait and using that rod. If you're not using that rod in heavy grass, you're just missing out, because it is a fantastic rod. We put so much time into the development of that rod that I don't use anything else in heavy grass, nothing. And I've gotten so used to it. I even, a lot of the people who throw on in rocky areas and dragging it on the bottom and chatterbait on the bottom and stuff, they like the glacier rods, with the parabolic bends and stuff. But I'm so used to that rod now, I don't ever. I throw a chatterbait with it no matter where I'm at. And but
how do the kayak series? Because I don't have. I think I have 4 or 5 of the Icon series.
Mm-hmm.
How do they stack up against the Icon? There's what, $40, $50, $50 or $60 difference in there? Or are they,
right,
as far as sensitivity, lightness, things like that?
Well, they're pretty much the same in all the attributes that they have. I mean, the lightness and the sensitivity and all that. I mean, basically, you're getting a little bit shorter rod length, and I'm not sure if it costs a little different for the handles and to mold the. So, because we put the EVM rubber on the butt of it there, so I think that might cost a little less for them to do in mass production. But it's basically. Okay. They're real close. The actions are real close, like the Worm and Jig series. If you compare them with the Icon, and the kayak series, they're real close. You can't hardly tell a difference in them, and the sensitivity is pretty much the same. There's not much difference in the blanks. It's just a little less for them to make the kayak series, but it's basically the same rod.
How does the end differ? Because on the Icon, it's the carbon fiber deal. How is this and this one different? Is it weighted differently since you have a little bit shorter rod? You said.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about the Worm and Jig series and the CK series,
Hmm.
but all the Icons have a weighted butt, so that's one difference in them. But when we first started out with the kayak series, we reduced the butt length by 3/4 of an inch, and it was a little bit too much. So they ended up taking a 1/2 inch off of it, and it seems to be working real well. It really works well. I'll tell you where it really comes into play is if you're fishing in cold weather. A lot of us do that throughout the year. This time of the year in the fall, and a lot of people in the summer they wear the inflatable life jackets and stuff, but in the wintertime we wear these big, thick. I wear the Chinook and NRS Chinooks, and they're thick. And that's where I think the shorter handle really comes into play when you're wearing bigger life jackets. And a lot of people don't like the inflatables, and they like to wear the thicker life jackets, the PFDs, and that handle, you can hold it out in front of you. There's no fatigue because you're not constantly pulling it away from you when you're working it. So you can just keep it in a little closer, and it's ergonomically correct.
I like the shaky head rod because I've had
Yeah.
this debate on the podcast before. That shaky head rod is a medium heavy.
Yes, it is.
I think a lot because they usually it depends on what shaky head you're throwing, but it seems like the gauge wire on most shaky heads is a little bit heavier, so you need the medium heavy to penetrate a little bit better.
Yeah, I like that, and especially since they have that in a regular casting rod too. And I use almost every tournament. I use just a regular casting rod for a bait casting rod, and the use of the shaky head in the last couple of years is really coming around. People, Z-Man has the Last Tech, and we all know it's a lot heavier bait. So you can actually, shaky head's gone from a spinning concept into the world of, it's kind of like a finesse fishing, but it's not. We're using, Casey and I are prime examples. We use 16, 17 pound, sniper, and it's not just a finesse presentation anymore. And we'll do a lot of our shaky head presentations almost like you're flipping, and we're moving and we're just flipping into areas and keep moving, flipping into areas, and that heavier line and the heavier baits like the Last Tech, you don't get wind knots and bird nests, and so it's become a different kind of style of fishing for the shaky head, whereas it used to be a mostly a spinning reel concept.
What kind of because you use a mag fatty, right?
I
That's
do.
usually your go-to.
I
And
like
is there a certain head that you prefer over others? I've been back and forth with so many different brands. I've been throwing the Untamed Tackle. They have a Shaken Ace, and that one's been my go-to for a while now. Which one do you have? Certain ones that you like more than others?
Yeah, I mean, lately, since they come out, when the SMH heads, the shaking my head heads from Z-Man first came out, I was kind of skeptical about them because I used to use I think it was a VMC, but it had a ball head on it, and it had the nice oversized hook. It was a little bit bigger than the different shaky heads, but the shaking my heads, the design of the head is really made for coming through grass, and I can throw it in pretty heavy timber. Yesterday when I was on the water, I was coming up to those pine tree laydowns, and you know how those pine cones, they'll grab your line and grab your shaky head all the time. But I was just dropping that thing right down in the middle of junk, and the head was coming out fairly clean. Now, they're not all bulletproof, but that head design on the shaking my head shaky heads is really good for fishing grass and stuff like that. So I've been using it a lot. That's pretty much my go-to anymore.
I think my only problem with the shaking my head that really upset me is because he didn't make the dang thing in the color of the deal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The
Like,
worm. Okay. The
yeah,
shaking.
like
Yeah. Yeah. I like
I
the
love
deal.
that. Like in Z Man, I still throw the bang stick. I love it in that color of the deal. I'm like,
Yes.
dang, Brian, when you got like, I hate you didn't come out with that color.
Yeah. The bang stick is pretty much my go-to for that shaking my head rig right there. I
Yeah,
mean, you can use just about anything. I mean, Z-Man has the actual mag fatties, which is a lot smaller than the mag fatties, uh, or the actual fatty Z instead of the mag fatty Z. Works really well on that. The shaking my head worms itself, I like a little more robust worm. Now, I will tell you this: I got on Hartwell one year and they just wouldn't hit the bang sticks for some reason, whatever reason. They wanted that slimmer profile, and I ended up using the shaking my head worms in a green pumpkin and did real well on them. But
hmm,
I like, if you're dropping into brush piles or you're fishing around timber, uh, and you're using a thinner worm, a lot of times that hook point tries to come through really easily, But if you're fishing
yeah.
away from wood, if you're fishing rock piles or something like that, I can get away with the slender profile of the shaking my head worms. But most of the time, I'm mixing it up. I got rock piles and I've got grass and I've got lay downs, and that shaking my head design seems to work a lot better for me. Uh,
So that's your two, the shaking my head and lighter cover rocks, things like that, and then around brush, things like that. You go with the
yeah,
bang stick.
yeah, I'm gonna go with
And
that.
it's, yeah, you just Texas rig the mag fatty. Is that what it is?
I do, and I pegged the sinker on the head of it. I'll tell you something though, a little thing here that I've noticed on the Mag Fatty. They're so buoyant, and it's got kind of a robust profile also. So
Mm,
when you're throwing I mean, a lot of people like to go with a 3/8 ounce sinker, and they get it down, it gets it down good, or a quarter ounce. But one thing I've noticed with that shaking my head is, or the Texas rig is, if you take a 3/16 tungsten or even an 1/8 ounce tungsten, the fall rate of that worm, for some reason, it just really turns the bass on certain times of the year. I mean,
yeah,
and it will kind of swim, kind of like like a big swim bait, like glide bait or something like that. And when that flat tail, when you throw that bait in the water with a real light head on it, it tends to glide. And a lot of times, if you can get that worm pointed at, like, say, under a dock or something like that, and if you get that you get your cast right and get that bait, if you can get it to hit tail first, it'll go even further back into it because it wants to glide back into it. So you can kind of control the direction of the fall with a real light tungsten weight on that. Uh, I use a 3/16 a lot on that Mag Fatty, and when I can, if I'm got to get down through grass, of course, I'm going to use a heavier uh, piece of tungsten on it. But most of the time, especially even if you're fishing in grass with that thing, it tends to weed itself through on the fall. It'll kind of weed itself through the grass, and it works real well under docks because of that. They have a lot of times fish will be suspended under docks, and if you throw it, it has a slower fall rate, so they tend to get to it a lot easier, a lot faster, or they'll make a decision to hit it on the fall rather than having to chase it all the way to the bottom. If you're fishing in 10, 15 foot of water on some of these deeper docks, a lot of times they'll just let it go if it's moving too fast. So you can slow your presentation down just with the weight of that tungsten. You throw a 3/16, throw an 1/8 ounce, and let that thing sink slow. And it kind of, Senkos, and everybody uses a weightless
yeah.
Senko, which is like the go-to bait when times are rough. And but that's something that I do with those worms too. That
So
mag
that is like your weightless Senko.
Pretty much. I used to throw Senko religiously, man, but I haven't thrown it much in the last couple of years because of that bait right there, and I haven't really noticed you know, a difference in my catch rate.
7 1/4. What size hook are you using with that? Is it
I'm
straight
using,
shank or?
yeah, I'm using a 4/0 EWG. I usually use the
I guess the thickness of the plastic you want an
yes, it's
EWG
the
for that.
thickness of the plastic. I like to have a little more extra room in that throat of the hook,
Yeah.
just because of the thickness of the plastic. And it's the same principle as with a swim bait. You want that little extra, you want that EWG, little extra wide gap on that throat.
Is there? I've heard. You know, it seems like the consensus is kind of like whenever you're pitching a worm or you're pitching a jig, that in the spring you want something lighter with a slower fall rate, and then maybe in the summer and the fall, whenever fish are a little bit more aggressive, you want more weight.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that, but I don't really understand it because at the same time I'm throwing a wacky rig and I'm catching the mess out of them,
Hmm.
and it falls super slow. Is there
Yeah.
a certain time of the year that you swap out your weight size with that technique?
The only time that I would really probably change my weight, uh, just for the season, would probably be in the colder months.
Yeah,
But most of the year, you can use that any time of the year, even in the summertime. I think just getting it in front of them seeing it fall, and the action of the bait as it's falling. I mean, that tip, Last Tech is always moving. It's just jittery, man. It's nervous plastic is what it is. So I use it year round, and I don't really change the weight just specifically for the time of year from about March all the way up through this time of the year. But in the wintertime, you want that slow presentation. I mean, that time of the year when the water's cold and get down in the 40s, I mean, you want something that's slow. And I mean, a lot of people they'll dead stick it, throw it out and let it
yeah,
sit and just barely move it every now and then, and then there's really a lot of times in the wintertime, I'll throw it out on like a ledge or a rock cliff or some kind of bluff off of deep water, and I'll just let it hit bottom and sit there. I'll let it sit there, and every now and then I'll just jiggle the slack in my line. I won't actually move the bait. I'll just kind of just pop the slack in my line and just to get it to twitch every now and then. And pretty much there's no drag to it at all. If I don't get a bite on it, I'll just reel it straight up and throw it to another spot, let dead stick it and just twitch it. And if I don't get nothing, I'll just reel it in. So you're not really moving that bait along the bottom like you do with a lot of different baits at that time of the year. Cold water, you just got to slow down,
yeah. I'm always trying to, because I can get way out of hand with how many soft plastics I bring out on a kayak. If you already have, like, my first thought would be a bank stick is like 6 1/4, mag fatty 7 1/4. Like, why, and you obviously carry the bank sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you think the mag fatty is that much better over the bank stick flipping that you want to carry that too?
Now the mag fatty is,
The mag fatty, I'm sorry.
yeah, the mag fatty is I'll use that in big fish situations, on these lakes that hold a lot of big fish. If I'm not real sure about it and it's just a different presentation because I can take a mag fatty and work heavy grass with a heavier sinker that slides through the grass really well. And if they're hitting it, they're hitting it. What happens with the bang stick is, you can also Nico rig a bang stick.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's the way I throw it most of the time.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
I don't use it for a shaky head. I just use it
mhm.
for a Nico. And
Right.
it's, I'm with X Zone. I love their baits, but that bank stick is, yeah, I mean, it's like peas and carrots with a Nico rig. It holds that weight, finesse shroom's head,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. I mean, if you're looking for a Nico bait,
That,
it's hard to beat the bank stick.
yep, it is. And and a lot of people, when that bait's floating, I mean, the properties of Elastec, when that thing hits the bottom and it's sticking straight up, anything like a crawdad or something like that, that's their defensive posture. I mean, first thing they do if they're threatened, they go to the bottom and they sit on their tails and they pop their pincher straight up. I mean, all those
Mhm.
baits stand up, and I really like that about Elastec. Because it's a defensive posture no matter what you're throwing, even if it doesn't look like a crawdad. And the worms, I think eels and stuff like that, or burrowing things, you know, when they stand and they hit straight up, it looks like they might be burrowing or whatever, but it's just a natural presentation. And that's why I really like a less tech. Not to mention they're tough and you don't go through as many of
Yeah,
them, you know.
for sure. Uh, have you ever done? I hate to ask this. I don't want to get your secrets, but like Russ blew me away because that guy. I'm not really a bait tinkerer or bait maker,
Yeah.
but let's just say he did. And if y'all want to go back and look, that's fine. Do you ever do any tinkering with the good thing about Elastec is you can kind of do some things with it that you can't others.
Oh yeah.
Do you mess around with them like that?
Yeah, sometimes I will. I mean, you know, I'll take a bang stick sometimes if I think that they're just grabbing the tail of it, but they like the specific color or that I'm throwing or whatever, and I don't have it in something else. I mean, I'll make a TRD out of them, you know, but use the same weight head, same style of heads, keep throwing it in grass, whatever, and you know, there's some other modifications you can do to them.
Yeah.
What was I used to do? I used to take them in like the Mac Fatty. I would take them and I'd split the belly a little bit toward the tail, and what it would do is it would just it just changes the rate of fall just a little bit, you know, and I wouldn't have to change baits or whatever, and it just gives it a little different action. But
Mm,
yeah, Last Tech you can do a lot, and Russ is a man, he is a
yeah.
mutant. He is a mutant, that dude. But you ask him what he won that last tournament on, he'll tell you it was a Mac Fatty. I got him on
Yeah.
Mac Fatties, and he's like, man, are they that much better than anything? I said, dude, just try them. And this was
Did
like,
Did you see what he did to it?
no,
He put jigs. I'll go ahead and say it. He put jig skirting in it,
yes, yeah,
like
yeah,
hanging out like it's the Geekrak Emo Kamushi or some of the
right,
hairy baits,
yeah,
Japanese JDM hairy baits are out. Because
yeah,
I guess he was trying to look like a Helgramite, a big Helgramite or something like that. And I mean, for Elastec has to be
yeah,
the only plastic you could like reasonably put jig
right.
skirting in it.
It holds well to everything. Now I used to do that with the regular Fatty Z's
Oh
because
yeah,
it has that long profile, you know, that you can only it's just different for them to look at. And if you put that little, take maybe 7 or 8 strands and just take it and just loop it through and then pull it through. And it's, yeah, it changes and people have been doing that with plastics on like creature baits for a long time. I know a lot of guys that used to take bands and they'll put skirts on just regular creature baits and run them on run them on a swing head jig.
huh?
Another
No,
one of my
no.
favorites, man. I love a swing head jig, dude.
Yeah, I heard you on one of those uh one of those Bash universities. You were talking about swing head, and
Yeah.
that's one honestly. I throw a football head a lot, and I'll kind of sometimes I'll move it where it's just bumping along the bottom as
Mhm.
much as you can. But I
Yeah.
haven't I haven't had a lot of success with a swing head. Why do you think you've been so successful with it?
And I don't know if it's just because the hook is detached and it gives it just a little different action to it. The hook kind of takes on the action of whatever the bait has instead
Yeah,
of just, you know, if you've got it straight connected to a jig, the hook just does one thing. It stays connected to the head of that jig. And with a swing head, as you're moving it, and I throw a lot of football head swing heads. That's one of my favorite swing heads is the football head, you know, and it's got its own, you know, water resistance. So it's moving a little bit as you're reeling it across the bottom, you know, stop, reel it, stop, reel it, stop. And, you know, that hook is doing whatever that bait is telling it to do. So it just adds a little different action to it or a little more action to it. And I think that might be the reason why they hit it so well. But man, I tell you, I've won a bunch of money. When I first started fishing, that's the only thing I threw. You know, I
mm.
made it to the 10 twice on a swing head jig pretty much.
Do you ever throw a football with jig, or is that just
Oh yeah,
completely
yeah.
replaced
I
it?
mean, you know, I've switched off. You know, lakes like Hartwell and Murray. You know, they have that. You know, they're usually big spot lakes. You know, but they have a
Yeah.
lot of rock in them. Those big rocky points and stuff like that, and rocky banks and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll throw a football jig. You know.
Hmm. Is that something that you carry all the time?
Yeah, yeah, I've got
Yeah.
but now that being said, now in the river, that's all I throw is a football head. I'll throw a
Oh,
creature
really?
bait on it. Yeah, I mean it's just they just do really well in the river. But a lot of times I'll take a football headed shaky head. Have you seen those?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they make the shaky head in the football jig, and those lakes that I'm talking about with the big spots in them, they love a bang stick. Those spots love bang sticks and the shaking my head one. They love them. So I'll throw a football head in that too.
Hmm. Dang. Now I want to have a whole show on swing heads because that's something I like. Like I selfishly like. Hey, I'm glad people get a lot of stuff out of the podcast. A lot of times I'm just doing it because I want to learn
You
something,
know, you
and
know what I really
and that's one I need to get. I have them in the box. I just
right.
yeah.
You know what I really like about a swing head is its versatility. I can use that just like a regular jig. I can swim it, and I can take it, and I do a lot of pitching, uh, especially
Oh really?
in dirtier water. I'll take that swing head jig and I can throw it in the worst junket you can, and it'll come out of it. A lot of people don't think it will, but it will. It will come out of it. I usually get more on top of it of whatever I'm pitching into. Like if I come up to a lay down and say it's a pine tree in 6 or 7 foot of water or whatever, if you get close to it, and a lot of people, they understand that those fish are in that area because that's their safe place. So you can usually get a little closer to them. And I'll just take it and drop it down in the head of something, or just kind of pitch it in and let it fall. And that, as long as your angle is fairly upright, it'll come right out of there. I mean, I've caught a lot of fishing the junk with a swing head. And then if you don't do no good, you're right back out on the bank. You don't have to switch your jig, and you can start swing heading it again. Reel stop, or just reel it and bump it on the bottom. I mean, it's really versatile, and it can take the place of a crankbait because you can actually
Yeah.
move that bait slow enough to where it pops over rocks and stuff. And if it gets hung, you just pop it loose and can come on, and you're not
That's a,
spending on.
that. I'm sorry. That's kind of how I thought of it, a swing head, because it's so difficult to throw like a 10XD or 6XD from a kayak, because you're pulled towards it. That
True.
I thought, like in my thought, I was going to put kind of throw a swing head on ledges and stuff, kind of in place of a crankbait, because it kind of does the same thing, but it's so much easier to throw.
It is.
Whenever you, it seems like a lot of times the weight I'm throwing, like you really have to go up with the weight,
Mhm.
but you really couldn't do that if you're pitching it. What weights are you throwing?
So I'll throw everything from a half ounce to 7/16, according to how deep the water is and how I'm using the jig. If I'm in say a river situation with the easy flow, then and in lakes with still water, then I'll throw as light as I can get away with. Uh, if I'm it just seems like Bill Dance said this one time. He said somebody asked him what weight he uses all the time, mostly. He says, I use the lightest weight that I can get by with. And it seems to work for me. So,
Yeah.
I use the lightest ones I can. I'll go all the way down to, a quarter. Now, some plastics will require a heavier weight to actually get, the maximum amount of action out of them. I'll use a 3/8 ounce lot on like Reaction Innovations, the Kinky Beavers.
Hmm.
Uh, those are great baits. I'll use a little heavier on them, but if I'm using like a palmetto bug or something like that, you can get down. It doesn't have a lot of twisty, twirly stuff on it, so you can use a lighter weight on it and get good action out of it.
All right. I got maybe this winter. I'll and off season, a little bit off season we have. I'll throw on
Mm.
that swing head and try to catch a few with it.
Try it, man. I mean, they're great in the summertime too, man. I mean, just
Yeah.
yeah, you just rake them against the rocks, and they don't hang up real bad. And a lot of times it's the head hanging up, so you can just pop them. Just take your line
Yeah.
out and pop it, and they'll come loose. So it's like a regular
But
jig.
it's usually going to be usually use beaver baits or maybe a beaver, but like the kinky beaver, it's
Mhm.
just like a sweet beaver with a couple of tails on it that move. So beaver style baits or something like,
Beaver style
something in
baits,
that range.
twin tail grubs. I've used them
Mm,
before on them. Just according, smallmouth love a twin tail grub, man. If I'm fishing like at the base of a dam and I need that bait to get down, a twin tail grub has a low profile, so it's going to sink faster. And I'll throw on a half ounce, head, a little heavier head, and the base of the dams usually have a lot of current, and I'll just throw it out and just pump it, pump it. And those smallmouth, they love that stuff.
hmm.
But in most situations, though, I'm using a beaver style bait on them. There are a few exceptions.
I saw this one video where a guy was talking about he put an extra split ring on there and he said it dramatically increased his hookup ratio. Do you mess with that?
Really? Mm-mm.
Yeah, he said like instead of one, by putting a second one on there, or I don't know, I don't remember where I saw a damn video. Who knows? The internet might be lying to me. Who knows? But this guy, he was saying that he puts an extra split ring on there and it helps.
I don't know. It could. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm just real leery about adding an extra link between my reel and the bait. I
yeah,
don't even like to use swivels. I mean, I know that the first thing I did when I buy like a whopper plopper or a bait like that, I change the split rings on them because I've had them pull loose so many times. And I don't know. I just like a direct connection between me and the bait. And the
yeah,
less connections I don't even use leaders. I mean, a lot of
yeah,
people tie leaders and stuff, and I don't do it. I just don't trust them. If I've got money on the line, I usually don't trust them.
yeah.
So
Well, there you go. The man with the information. Dude, I appreciate you being on. And sorry,
yeah,
Kurt. Sorry to Kurt. I know he was dying to be here too. But we'll get him on next one. We'll get him some IT support.
yeah, I can't believe we've been trying to get this together for so long, and then
Yeah.
when the time finally comes, and it's
That's
Murphy.
how it works. And this is
That's how it works,
StreamYard's the
man.
best program, but
Yep,
it
yep,
just is what it is. Yeah.
it is. But
So
I appreciate
so
you guys having me.
tell everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said I really appreciate you guys having me, man. I love getting on here and sharing information, and I appreciate you guys and everything you do.
Yeah, man, you're one of the best guests there are. You're always welcome. People, you obviously need to go see him on Bash University, but where else can people find you?
You can find me on my Facebook page at Jody Queen Fishing, and it's the same for Instagram and YouTube. Just Jody Queen Fishing, and you should be able to find me.
Sounds good. Appreciate you, man, and we'll see everybody on the next show. Appreciate y'all listening. Later.
Thanks, man. We'll see you guys.